Well, hey, how's it going? Thank you for being here, and thank you for 200,000 subscribers. That is absolutely mind blowing. I think I mentioned it before, but when I first started the channel, I never thought that maybe I might get to 10,000. That would be cool. I never expected I'd get to 100,000, let alone 200,000. So this has just been incredible. Just watching the channel grow over the years and really defy every expectation I've had for it, and it's just so awesome. And I want to thank you for all the love and support that you guys have given me over the years. It really just means so much because I wouldn't still be doing this if it wasn't for you. Obviously, I'd still be interested in Japanese history and samurai history, but I don't think I'd be making content, obviously, if it wasn't for the support that you have given me over the years and the encouragement. You make my work feel worthwhile. You make me feel, that what I'm doing, it makes sense to do this, for me to do this. And I'm just so incredibly thankful that, you guys are out there to support and encourage me to continue to do this, and so that I can give it my energy back to you in the form of my videos. So yeah, I'm so incredibly thankful and appreciative of all your love and support over the years. This community is just so incredible, and I'm just thank you for 200,000. Now, I have to say, I wasn't entirely sure what to do for a video commemorating this milestone at first. If you've been watching my past couple videos here, you'd know this summer has been rough for me for a certain reason. And yeah, I wasn't exactly... This milestone, although I knew it was approaching, it wasn't exactly something pressing on my radar. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do to commemorate it. I did think about maybe doing another samurai memes video, but I wasn't sure about that at the time. And there's just a number of things, but in the end I did settle on one idea, and I was working on it until about yesterday when I've been thinking about it. And it is a funny video, and it's more of a joke video and more of a it's something just kind of completely just unserious, but still one that I think many of you might get a kick out of. But I realized, maybe right now isn't the time I want to release that. After thinking about it, I do have an idea in my head of when I want to release that, and I in the future, you will know that video when it comes out, and you're like, oh, that's the video he was talking about. So don't worry, that video will likely still get released. But for this one, for this 200,000 milestone, yeah, I wanted to maybe instead do something a bit more relaxed. One question I have gotten over the years is, of course, what is my favorite samurai clan? In fact, I've also gotten questions of, like, what is my favorite daimyo, like Sengoku daimyo, leader of a clan, famous samurai figure, any of those. Those are all questions I've gotten over the years, and I've tried to think, what would that be? Because it's such a hard question to answer. So today, I think, it might be fun to kind of walk through my thought process with that. Like, what would that be? How would that look? What kind of things do I take into account when I'm considering what my favorite would be? Yeah, we can dive all through that. But while we talk about that, I thought it would also be pretty fun if, maybe, we paired that with something. Now, many of you might already know from other videos and from other things I've talked about that I like painting miniatures and miniature wargaming. I'm big into Warhammer. I paint Age of Sigmar. I've been painting miniatures for about 5-6 years now. And like I said, I do Age of Sigmar. I've kind of dabbled with picking up older models from fantasy. And of course now there's the old world, but I'm waiting right now for whenever they're gonna do Chaos Dwarves and add that back into Age of Sigmar, I think I've heard. So I'm holding out for that. But in the meantime, I have been diving a bit more into historical miniature wargaming. I painted a few Napoleonics. I think I did a regiment of Napoleonic infantry. I painted up Marshal Ney. And then, yeah, I've gotten a number of samurai miniatures, but I have yet to paint any of my samurai miniatures. I have a unit of samurai from Warlord Games, and I have a number of different commanders that I've picked up from Perry Miniatures, who do amazing metal pewter miniatures. I have a really cool one that I've been really eager to paint that I picked up from them is Kato Kiyomasa. I think it's just an amazing miniature, but I've just been so afraid to paint it because the thing about samurai miniatures is I feel the detail with the armor, you need to really have that down, and I've been afraid because I don't want to botch it. So I haven't really returned to paint any of my samurai miniatures yet. But recently, I looked into, there's a company, I think it's an Italian company, it's called Fireforge Games, and they have an amazing line of samurai miniatures as well. And I went and I picked up a Uesugi Kenshin and Takeda Shingen. So there's Uesugi Kenshin, I already have him out of his box. And I have here Takeda Shingen, still in his box. And I have assembled and primed Kenshin. You get both, him on foot and you get him on horseback. What I'll do to show them off better, because I know the camera right here may not focus to them as well, I'll try to show what they look like in a better format. But basically, yeah, let's paint this Kenshin here together and let's talk some samurai history. Even though I've been doing this for 5-6 years, I'm no expert with painting minis. I have my own system, my own way of doing it. I have my wet palette set up here and my paints that I think I'll need, and I don't have, I just have some paper toweling laid out here. I don't have the amazing setup, but yeah, I think this should still be good. I know many of you watching this might be, far more experienced painters than I. So if you have any critiques or things that I should be doing differently, you think, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to get any advice about anything that I could improve upon. But yeah, let's dive in. I'm gonna move the camera closer so you can see the mini better as I'm painting here and as we talk. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna have the camera like this, I think. So I'll turn it around occasionally. It still has an issue focusing, but I think you can get an idea of the detail as we go along. Now, as we get started, let me just talk about a bit more what my plan is for Kenshin here. The way that I've always kind of gone about painting, and as you can see, you might recognize I did a bit of a zenithal highlight on him with the primer. I primed him in black, and then I went back and I did just a layer of white quickly over the top. What's interesting about these models from Fireforge is that whatever material is used, whatever resin, it's not a typical plastic. I imagine it's some kind of resin. It really didn't work with any of the glues that I tried to use, and it kept coming apart. So I kind of resorted to super glue, and I've used Gorilla Glue at times if I need to. But Gorilla Glue, although it's great, it doesn't necessarily bond right away. It usually takes a little bit. So what I ended up using was like Loctite, and Loctite kind of just immediately bonds. So that's what I use for these guys. So if you do pick up some of these awesome samurai minis from Fireforge, Loctite is what I used. If you can get Loctite, this way. That's what I used to glue my guys together here. But yeah, when I paint minis, I usually try to go from usually the lowest area visible first. So his most outer clothing would be last, and I would do his stuff further down first. So usually skin is like the first thing you do. And for Kenshin here, the only skin that is showing is his face. So we're just gonna do his face. I know his hands are there, but I think we're gonna do gloves for his hands. He's gonna have gloves on. I do have a couple different skin tones I use. I usually use Vallejo paint, although I do use testers for my metallics. I've always liked testers metallics. And then I have some Army Painter washes that I might use as well. And we'll get into all that if you don't know what any of those things are. But yeah, let's start off with a bit of this basic skin tone, and we're gonna get into it. One thing about Kenshin here is that it looks like they gave him a bit of a beard. So we are going to need to probably go back and put that in as well, which is going to be interesting. So one thing that I've always noticed with minis is that when you paint them, there is a bit of there's a process they go through where they look really crappy after a little bit, and it's not your fault. It's just because they're not done. I know, like, whenever my girlfriend paints miniatures, they get to a point where they're just not finished yet. Like, they're not completely done, and it doesn't look necessarily good yet because they're not done. But mentally, you think, "Oh, this looks terrible. What am I doing?" And all it needs is a little bit more time, and then all of a sudden, it turns out to be really quite good. So it just needs that time. So I know as we go through this today, he's not gonna look good right away. I mean, he looks kind of, just with the face, you can tell, right? And he's gonna need a lot of coats, obviously, for his face. But yeah, he'll come along. Now, the color scheme I'm going to go with for Kenshin here is going to be a bit different. We don't really know. I don't think we know what Kenshin's armor actually looked like. We have, I think, ideas, but really nothing has survived, at least that I know, of what Kenshin's armor really looked like. There's ideas and stuff. I know there is sort of a more silver set of armor out there that I think people have tried to attribute to him, but really I don't think anything is out there that is 100% correct. Same thing with, like, Takeda Shingen's armor, for example. We usually see Shingen having that flowing white mane on his helmet, but really that's not really accurate either. So it's hard to know what is the most accurate in terms of Kenshin's armor. But the way that I'm going to paint him here is going to instead, sort of funny enough, I'm going to try to follow the same kind of color scheme that we see on for his armor in, like, the Samurai Warriors games. I think that's a good color scheme. It's mostly, you got the white, you got the black, and you got kind of a bit of gold and purple in there, and I think that's kind of an iconic combination for Kenshin. So that's what I'm going to go with for his armor here, and the different colors I'll be using to put him together. But the white will probably be last, just because he's got this overcoat here and this hood, and that's where the white is going to come in. So we'll be doing all the darker colors underneath first, with the black and with the armor and all that. Okay, let's talk about samurai clans now that we're getting into this. What do I think is my personal favorite samurai clan? This is a very difficult question to answer. It's like, you get asked what your favorite movie is. Okay, how do you answer that? It's such a difficult thing because there's so many options out there. There are so many things to enjoy and like, and somehow you have to pick one. That's why a lot of times I say one of my favorite. But yeah, let's dive into that. If I had to pick one, what would it be? And like I said, this is a question that, it seems like a lot of people have, their favorite clans. I know a lot of people who love the Takeda. Takeda is their favorite. I know people who love the Toyotomi. I know people who love, the Uesugi. So I'm sure a lot of that might come from, their time playing games like Shogun 2, like what clans do they enjoy playing the most, stuff like that. I was first introduced to the figure of Uesugi Kenshin through the card game Anachronism. It was a History Channel card game that was out in the early 2000s at some point. Back when I was in middle school, and we played Anachronism, and Kenshin was a good card. So was Shingen. Shingen was also a good card. There were a lot of good Japanese cards, but there were all sorts of different countries and civilizations involved. Japan was just one of them. But I always liked the Kenshin card, the Kenshin warrior that you could use and play as. So that's my first introduction to Uesugi Kenshin. And really, I think Kenshin is one of my favorite samurai leaders of all time, if not my most favorite. I definitely like a lot of other ones. I like Kato Kiyomasa is always fascinating. Shimazu Yoshihiro is always fascinating. There's different Inaomasa I enjoy. I could make a whole list. There's so many different ones we could talk about, but I think Kenshin is my number one. Sanada Yukimura, of course. Honda Tadakatsu. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, more are popping into my head. Okabemoto Nobu. But if we're talking about a daimyo, a leader, Kenshin, I think, is my most favorite. And he is someone I have been planning on making a video specifically about in the near future here. So that will be something coming at some point where we're just going to talk about Kenshin. But as long as we're talking about that, it's still hard to talk about what my favorite clan is. And this is where it gets really difficult. Because just because I like Kenshin doesn't mean that the Uesugi are my favorite samurai clan of all time. Kenshin number one wasn't born part of the Uesugi. He was born Nagao Kagetora. So it's hard to say, oh yeah, I love the Uesugi, but really just Kenshin's part of it. And there is cool history outside of Kenshin and the Uesugi. There's the time before Kenshin where they were so influential during the Muromachi period, and then of course even later after Kenshin, as we get into the rule of Kagekatsu and his involvement in like the Sekigahara conflict and all that. So there's more to be had there, of course, but Kenshin really is the heart of that. And you could say the same thing for someone like Takeda Shingen, who, the Takeda clan of Kai. Shingen is really the main element of that. And if you remove Shingen from the equation, the Takeda aren't nearly as significant, of course. They wouldn't have had their massive expansion, were it not for Shingen. And then, of course, you do have well-known daimyo kind of before and after him. His father Nobutora was of course significant to a degree. And then after Shingen, we have his son Katsuyori, who took over, and Katsuyori has his own story, as we know. But really, both of Nobutora and Katsuyori, they don't necessarily have that level that Shingen has, and really their fame is much more owed to Shingen. They wouldn't be significant were it not for Shingen. So it's really hard to say that they would, that the Takeda itself would stand out. So the Takeda, number one, aren't necessarily my favorite clan either. I enjoy the Takeda, but they're definitely not my favorite. Uesugi, a little more difficult. They're up there for sure for me, but I wouldn't necessarily call them my favorite either. Just because, I have that problem where I think about, but would I like them if I remove Kenshin from the equation? Would I like the Takeda if I remove Shingen from the equation? So it's hard. So what other clans are we left with then? And I am really just talking about the Sengoku Jidai, if you didn't realize. I am just talking about the Sengoku period. There's a number of clans that pop up. First off, let's talk about clans I wouldn't consider as well. The Oda, for example, another clan where you remove Nobunaga from the equation, and do you still like the Oda? It's hard. I don't think I really could think much of the Oda without Nobunaga. Same thing with Toyotomi. Mori, they're a bit more difficult. The Mori are fascinating, but once again, they owe a lot of that to Motonari. I think Teramoto did a lot to sully the name of the Mori, unfortunately, especially with his indecision and just his conduct during the Sekigahara conflict. It's hard to really redeem them too much after that. I know, of course, it was the Mori family, Choshu domain, that played a large role in the Boshin War later, but that is much later. So I don't think the Mori is a clan I would necessarily strongly consider as a favorite of mine, although they are interesting. And I really do enjoy Hiroshima Castle, or the rebuilt Hiroshima Castle now, because the original was destroyed, sadly. I have a Mori banner actually that I purchased at Hiroshima Castle that I've had on my wall for a long time, just kind of as a symbol of I was there. Uh, but yeah, Mori I wouldn't consider. Um, and then there's a few others that I had in mind. Not a big fan of the Date. The Date are interesting, but I'm not a big fan of the Date. Um, the ones that stick in my head still then are there's the Hojo, there are the Shimazu. Um, I'll even throw in the Hosokawa. I know they're not super important in the Sengoku period. They do have their moments, but they're not major. Um, I can consider the Tokugawa. The Tokugawa definitely I think are up there, but um, in terms of the Sengoku period, I've never been a big fan of the Tokugawa. Um, yeah, it's hard. They definitely have some really fascinating figures that were loyal to them that I've enjoyed. Like I said, Inao Masa, Honda Tarakatsu, Torimoto Tara, figures like that do make the Tokugawa more interesting in terms of who was a part of them, who was under the Tokugawa banner. But yeah, it's hard. Um, let's say okay, so we'll eliminate the Tokugawa from consideration here. Sadly, um, Sanada. We got to think of the Sanada too. Sanada are very interesting. Um, I think obviously their scope is much smaller if you want to think about really when they're important. But they did have a number of different leaders that you can pull from. Like if you remove Masayuki from the Sanada, you still have Nobushige, Yukimura. So the Sanada fit that bill where if you remove a significant figure, you still have an interesting clan, I think. Same thing with the Shimazu. If you remove really any of these Shimazu brothers there, if you remove Yoshihiro, you still have Iehiza. I can't remember all the Shimazu brother names now. It's been a while. But yeah, you still have more figures within the Shimazu that are interesting. And I have to say, extra points to the Shimazu. I've always liked the Shimazu, but you know, I was I was sent a lot of Shimazu goodies from Singanen, from Alex Bradshaw, who you may know. He has his YouTube channel, People of Kagoshima. He works pretty much for the Shimazu family in a way. And so the Shimazu get extra points on there just for that detail. Yeah, but who else then? Hojo. Remove one of the Hojo leaders. Remove Ujimasa, you still have Ujiyasu. Remove Ujiyasu, you still have Ujitsuna. Remove Ujitsuna, you still have Hojo Son. Remove Hojo Son, remove any of the Go Hojo, the later Hojo leaders, and you can go back to the earlier Hojo, and you have Tokimasa, and you have Masako, and you have other Hojo, figures of the great Hojo Regency. So the Hojo too, they have such an incredible story. That you can talk about the Hojo as well. So yeah, the Hojo are great. I know I mentioned Hosokawa. The Hosokawa, you go back into the Onin War, and you have Hosokawa Katsumoto. He's interesting, and then later on you have Hosokawa Fujitaka, you have Hosokawa Taraoki, you have Taraoki's wife Gracia or Gracia. You do have a lot of really interesting Hosokawa figures. I know they're not maybe, like I said, super influential during the Sengoku period, but they're still interesting. So it's hard, but yeah, I don't know if I necessarily would have the Hosokawa up there as my favorite. I do like them, but yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I think that if we were to narrow it down, it would be between probably the Shimazu and the Hojo, just because of the fact that they have that longevity. I can remove a great leader from the consideration from within them, and they are still an interesting clan. The Hojo, Shimazu, Sanada too. Sanada I might eliminate just because their scope is a bit more limited. Yeah, I don't know. I think what I might have to do, sadly, is just say it's between the Hojo and the Shimazu. You know what? No, I'm gonna lean more Shimazu, for one other reason, and that is because they're in the West. When I was going to be moving to Japan and living in Japan, the region I was going to be living in, I was part of for the company I was working for. I was part of the western branch of the company. I was going to be situated in the west. I was going to be in Shikoku, not Kyushu, but I was part of the western branch of the company. And I was getting ready for the heat of being, in Western Japan. And I know it's hot across all of Japan in the summer, but yeah, I always like to think about the heat, and I was getting ready to have that experience of being in Western or Southern Japan. So because of that, I'm going to lean more Shimazu. And they did do a lot of really interesting things outside of the Sengoku period or outside of Japan even. They were the ones responsible for the capture of Okinawa, and they were involved with the invasion of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Of course, Yoshihiro played a significant role at during the Imjin War. He also played a very significant role at the Battle of Sekigahara, as we know. Not to mention the fact that even later, the Shimazu were, of course, very important during the Bakumatsu period. The all of Satsuma Domain played such a massive role in the Boshin War. So there's a lot that can be said about the Shimazu, and they continue to be prominent even to this day. So yeah, I think Shimazu is what I would go to if I were to say what my favorite clan is. I believe I would say Shimazu. Yeah, so that's what mine is. You now let me know in the comments what yours is. What is your favorite samurai clan? I'd love to hear from you guys now. What is yours? Okay, as we are coming along here with Kenshin, though, going back to Kenshin, I'm putting black underneath now for most of his armor and underrobes. I'm going to eventually do a bit of a dry brush on his armor with a silver, to kind of bring out some of the highlights of the armor, and then I'll do some, I think, purple detailing on top of that for some of the threading, if possible. We'll see what I can do here. I'm not holding my breath that this is going to look amazing, but I'm at least going to try it out, and then later I get to do the same exact thing with the one on horseback when I do him later. But I'm not going to do him in this video. If anything, I will post a finished version of him on social media to show what he looks like when he's done. But yeah. Now, I did recently actually play a campaign as the Uesugi on Nobunaga's Ambition. Just this last spring it was. I played as the Uesugi, and it was a learning curve. It's a bit harder in Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening because in order for Uesugi Kenshin to become Uesugi Kenshin, you have to kind of follow a specific set of events that can get thrown off very quickly depending on what the AI decides to do. So you kind of have to start either at a certain start point so you know that you are guaranteed to become Uesugi Kenshin. Otherwise, you'll be stuck as Nagao Kagetora throughout the whole campaign, which is fine if you want that, but I'd want to become Kenshin. So I made sure that either I tried my best to follow the historical kind of event settings so that I could get to that point, or I I didn't, but I did, and I completed it as Kenshin, and then I eventually unified Japan. Sadly, Kenshin died. I turned off the event where he died, so he did live past 1578. He lived into the either 1580s or 1590s in my campaign, but eventually he did pass away. and then I had to decide, okay, who was going to succeed him. I didn't want to have the Otate no Ran. I didn't want to have the civil war in Echigo because that event just completely ruins your campaign, obviously, because it destroys all of your momentum because you have to fight a civil war. So instead, what I did was I named an heir prior to Kenshin dying. When he started to die, the game tells you, and I went and I named instead of naming Kagekatsu my heir, I actually named Kagetora my heir. And my mindset in doing that and naming Kagetora my heir in Nobunaga's ambition was that, okay, so Kenshin is supposed to be the Kanto Kanrei. He's supposed to have really, stewardship or guardianship over the Kanto region bestowed upon him by the shogun. So if that's the mindset, who can I put in power to sort of combine not only the Uesugi but also the current holders of Kanto, the Hojo. So I went and I eliminated the Hojo clan. I wasn't sure I don't remember if I eliminated them before or after this point, but I did take the Kanto region, and with Uesugi Kagetora now as the head of the clan, it was sort of like I felt like it was a symbolic kind of bridging of both the Hojo and the Uesugi, not only spanning from Echigo all the way down to Odawara, and that's a really fun thing to do, is sort of play with that mindset of trying to unify those lands and in a powerful way. So if you have never done that on if you've never played that campaign like that on Nobunaga's Ambition, I highly recommend it. It's a good time. Let's see, what can I do now? Deciding if I want to go ahead and start painting his outer, his kind of his robes just yet. I don't know. Maybe I'll keep doing the layers of black right now. Here's what I got so far. His face is very, very exposed, and then you can see a little bit of the black that's coming through. I could do his swords. I might make his belt purple as well. I think that would look cool if I turned his belt purple. I gotta have that purple accent just to kind of have that in, and then I gotta figure out where I'm going to put some gold, because I want him to have some gold as well. He's not really sticking that well to the I use this kind of poster putty stuff to kind of keep him in place. I used to just use tape, and that was very difficult, but this poster putty works a lot better. Usually it's not really working that well for him, and I wonder if it's the material he is still. Some people are really cool and they actually put them on magnets, and that is probably the best way to do it, but putty works good on most occasions. If you're someone who paints miniatures, what do you usually do? Let me know in the comments. What's your preferred method of making sure your mini is stable? Oh yeah, and then I used to have this wooden cube here. I picked up a whole bunch of these wooden blocks from Hobby Lobby. I have a ton of them, but I do have one of those kind of more grip things that you can get from Games Workshop, that you can kind of have them on too. And I have that somewhere, but I can't find where I have it right now, sadly. I packed it away at one point, and I have yet to dig it up or find where it was before. So he's on the cube right now, and I think the cube works good. See, I'm glad I haven't painted his head yet, because I can put my thumb here he starts to fall off. If I had painted his head already, then I couldn't be able to do that, because I'd be getting my finger in the white paint on top, and that's not good. But yeah, Fireforge Games, they have a lot of good minis. They've come out with this Commander line. They have Kenshin, they have Shingen, they have I believe they have Tokugawa Ieyasu, they have Oda Nobunaga. I think they have Date Masamune too. I think that's who they currently have. Hopefully over time they put some more out, because that'd be cool to see them do even more. I'd love to see some, like I said, Shimazu leaders, some Hojo leaders. Yeah. I always kind of, I think it's funny when they include the date and stuff like that. And I know you guys have probably heard me complain about the date before. Not complain to the sense that I don't think they're interesting, but complain to the sense of how overly glorified the date are. When for most of the Sengoku period, they were quite insignificant up in the north. They weren't really a thought on anyone's mind until around 1590. So it's funny when you see the date always, you know, being thrown around as heavyweights when really they weren't. Not until later. And even then, it was quite late. It reminds me of Age of Samurai Battle for Japan, that train wreck. I still see people saying, "Oh, I just watched Age of Samurai. It's so good." I'm like, I don't know about that. What do you think of Age of Samurai? Let me know in the comments. Have you revisited it? What are your thoughts on it when you experienced it? What did you think of Age of Samurai? I think, as you know, I had a number of complaints with it, and I know I'm not alone with those either. I don't think my review was scathing. Maybe it was scathing. I don't know. I remember people at the time thought maybe it was being a bit too harsh, but there were also a lot of people who agreed with me. And you have to ask yourself, if it's a show that is presenting itself as real history, how do you judge it? How do you interpret it? And do you judge it more harshly? Do you, if it's a documentary and it's providing bad information, outdated stereotypes, and all sorts of things, how do you judge it? And there's a difference with it being a documentary. You look at something like the new Assassin's Creed game, which I've tried not to talk about a lot of Assassin's Creed here because I know that's just a mess too, with the whole Yasuke drama, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But what I will say is a lot of people have been upset about the Yasuke drama, and it's hard because whatever you want to complain about with the game's historical accuracy or inaccuracy, Assassin's Creed has never been a game or a game series that has tried to be 100% historically accurate. It's a video game at the end of the day. And I think in some places they have said that this is this is trying to follow real history and whatnot. Take that with a grain of salt. It's Assassin's Creed. It's a game that has all sorts of weird fantasy lore, with whatever I don't remember even all the different things in Assassin's Creed. It's been so long since I cared about Assassin's Creed, but it's never going to be. It's not a documentary. It's not a history book. It's Assassin's Creed. And that's what I think is so funny about people who want to complain about it. At least one of the reasons why. Where you're not going to get real history or a real historical representation out of an Assassin's Creed game. You will never. You'll get little bite-sized details of real history, but really you're never going to get anything close to resembling real history. And that's what people need to remember when it comes to Assassin's Creed. Because I think people have seemingly forgot that, or maybe Ubisoft has forgotten to really portray that in a much clearer sense too. And I don't want to completely take the blame off of Ubisoft, because Ubisoft certainly isn't clean in this matter either. All right, but enough talk about that. I don't want to get too deep into that conversation because it is such a divisive subject right now. I'm still deciding if I want to play the game. I haven't completely ruled it out. It'd be difficult to really want to play it, but I don't know. At the same time, I still have an ounce of curiosity there regarding what it could be, and not only what it could look like, but how bad is it going to be. So maybe it'll be a bit better than what I thought too. I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. We'll think about that more once the time comes. So I also want to give a shout out, if you didn't know. I also helped with a book, not the rules, but the history details within a samurai wargaming rule set called Clash of Katanas. If you've ever played that, I made some exclusive videos that you can find within the book through QR codes, and they'll take you to the YouTube channel for Clash of Katanas, and you can see videos that I made talking about the history of each clan that is represented within the game. So that is something I did do with samurai miniature wargaming. Yeah, I've always really been interested in doing more with samurai miniatures. I haven't ever played any games though with samurai miniatures, and I'd be curious, for those of you out there that have, what is your experience? What rule sets do you enjoy? Is there one that you really like? Let me know in the comments, because I would love to get more into that. I don't know what kind of scene there is in my area for samurai miniature wargaming, so I'd love to hear more about that if you have more experience with that, and sort of just how to what is a good rule set to get into. And that's also something else about miniature wargaming that I like is it doesn't really matter where you get the minis from, as long as they are the correct scale. With Warhammer, you need Warhammer minis, and I should say most of the time you need Warhammer minis, unless you want to proxy something, or the people who get into the 3D printing aspect of it. But you need Warhammer minis to play Warhammer. With miniature wargaming, you can really buy your minis from any sort of different seller, as long as they are the correct scale and they just work for whatever system you're using, it seems like. And I really like that aspect of it, where you can kind of shop around and see what different sellers have. Like I said, I have samurai miniatures from Warlord Games, from Perry Miniatures, and from Fireforge now. So it's fun to kind of go around. And I know I have whole lists created for Napoleonics, but that isn't. I haven't followed through and bought too many of them just yet. I only have I have a unit of infantry. I have a unit of cavalry that I painted a bit, but I didn't finish just yet. Yeah. I also, of course, play different board games with friends. I've been into playing board games all my life. Recently, I just played Twilight Imperium with some buddies. That game, of course, as some of you might know, is quite expansive, especially the fourth edition. It's just ridiculous. But I have to say, I actually won it for the first time the other week. I've never won Twilight Imperium before with my friends, and finally I won. I was playing as the Titans of Ul, which are big, like, half machine, half organic constructs that are kind of like the Titans from from World of Warcraft. The Titans, and they're searching through the galaxy for more Titans to awaken, which is exactly like the Titans in World of Warcraft lore. So that was interesting. That was awesome to do, and to win that for once. So if you've played Twilight Imperium, you know the struggle. I like Axis and Allies, though, too. I'm not the biggest fan of Ikusa. Previously, it was Shogun, and then it was Samurai Swords, that board game that's kind of like Axis and Allies, but in Japan. I'm not the biggest fan of that one. I enjoy aspects of it, but there's ways you can cheese your army setups, and I have a buddy on Discord who I played that with on Tabletop Simulator quite a bit, and I would build an army completely, with some of the best samurai units, and really just make it a beefy army, and then he would just get tons and tons and tons of Ashigaru, and of course, guess what would win? All the Ashigaru, not your beefy, highly sought after, highly paid for samurai army. It would just be all of the Ashigaru, just the hundreds of Ashigaru. And I guess that is kind of telling of the period, but it was a bummer because you don't. It's hard to plan for that. As a whole, I get frustrated with dice games though too. Dice games annoy me to a degree just because of the random chance aspect. Like, you could plan and strategize all you want, but if you don't get the right rolls, you are out of luck and you lose. So I enjoy games sometimes more where there isn't that random chance. It's why I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with like D&D and other role playing games where there's the random chance aspect, and it's a bummer when you plan and you try to do stuff and it doesn't work because you don't get the rolls. Even when you have a great plan, great strategy, it doesn't matter. Now, one game that overcomes that, and I love it, is the Game of Thrones board game. If you've ever played the Game of Thrones board game, that is a blast. And that game doesn't have any dice whatsoever. There is a way you can play it that is like an extra rule set where there is some more random chance added in, but you don't need to play it that way. That isn't the primary way of playing it. You just, you have these leader cards, and the leaders are what impact the battle, not random chance, not dice. And so you have to sort of know, okay, what can my my opponent's leader do compared to what my leader can do, and kind of plan out more like that. So it's much more strategy, and just the intense kind of mind games you play with your opponents is so much more engaging than rolling dice, in my opinion. That's just me. Not a big dice fan. The most tedious thing about painting minis, though, is just making little errors or accidentally getting paint in a place where you didn't want to, and then you got to go back and do touch-ups. That's always the most frustrating part of painting minis, is the going back and the constantly, oh, I got to fix that, oh, I got to fix that, oh, I screwed up there. But that's all part of it. That is entirely all part of the experience. There's never a time we're going to do this and it's going to be perfect the entire way through. You're always going to have little moments like that where things goof. One thing that's nice about these minis from Fireforge is that their scale is, although it's 28 millimeters, they seem a bit more like their dimensions are a little bit larger. So it does help with a bit of the detail as I look at it here. Some minis are just so tiny that it's hard to get the sense of to get into all the detail. But for this guy, I can definitely tell, it's gonna be a little bit easier just because of that little bit increase in the size. He's definitely a very nicely sculpted mini. Very nicely sculpted. Okay, so that's kind of the rough way he looks right now. Obviously, more layers are going to be needed. We have to go back and go over a lot of stuff, but this is kind of how he's turning out at the moment. Oops, there we go. The focus is always going to be fun to mess around with, but you'll see how it looks at the end. Okay, well, here he is. I think this is as good as I'm going to get him. What do you guys think? Now, what I'll do, here's how he is now, but then tomorrow what I'm going to do is, of course, put the grass, I'm going to, of course, spray him the finish, but then I'll also go and I will put the grass on the base, and that should add an extra little level of pop to it. So what I'll do is I'll put, maybe I'll go this way. Yeah, I'll put, here's what he looks like here, and then on this side of the screen over here, I'll put what he looks like tomorrow. No, he's not going to focus, which is great. I'll just put on the screen so you can see what he looks like finished. And then, of course, what I'll do is I'll come back eventually, and I'll do him on horseback. And what I'll do, probably just post that on social media or something. Say, here's what he looks like with on horseback. But yeah, I think this is good. Looking at it in this light now, I do think he turned out quite well. I am happy with him, and I'm excited to go back now and also paint him on horseback. But that wraps it up for this video. Once again, I want to say thank you for everything. Thank you for 200,000 subscribers. Thank you all. It's amazing. I'm still blown away by this. it's hard to put into words my appreciation for what you have shown me. And I'm just excited to keep moving forward. So, with that said, thank you for everything. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys again very soon. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most enjoyable and interesting.